I told myself this was exactly what I needed. A month alone. No emails, no obligations, just me, a notebook, and a cabin deep in the woods. The drive out was long. The GPS kept recalculating, like it didn't want me to find the place. Eventually, the road narrowed to a single lane, gravel crunching under the tires. Pines crowded both sides, tall and black, like sentries. The air smelled damp and ancient. I realized I hadn't smelled fresh air like this in years. Not since childhood. Not since the city. When I saw the cabin, it took my breath. Wood, weathered gray, moss creeping up the sides. The windows stared blankly, empty-eyed. No smoke curled from the chimney. The driveway was overgrown, dappled with shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a bird cawed. Or was it a crow? The sound bounced between the trunks. I parked. Engine off. Silence. Not the kind of silence that's peaceful, the kind that feels watched, like the trees were waiting. I stepped out. Gravel crunched under boots. Air cold, moist, clean, almost antiseptic. I looked around. The forest pressed in on all sides. Shadows pooled under trees. The sun was low, burning gold through the branches. No one was here. No one for miles. I told myself that over and over. I carried my bag to the cabin. Wooden boards creaked. The door protested with a long, low groan. Inside smelled of damp wood and old fire smoke. Dust floated in the sunbeams. I set my bag down. I walked through the rooms. The kitchen had a rusty sink. The stove looked functional. A table, 2 chairs. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. I ran my hands along the walls. Smooth, cold, quiet. I opened the windows. Birds scattered in alarm. I stepped outside and listened. Just leaves, wind whispering, a distant creak. That should have been it. But then it came. A sound I couldn't place. A footstep? No, not mine. I froze, heart hammering. The forest seemed to exhale. The silence returned, heavier now, like something was hiding just out of sight. I told myself it was a rabbit, maybe a deer, the branches snapping. My imagination. I laughed, quietly, nervously. It echoed off the walls. I unpacked a few things. Notebooks, laptop, coffee. The routine calmed me. Comfort in the mundane. Night came quickly. The sky darkened behind the trees. Stars pierced the blackness. The moon rose thin and pale. The cabin became a small box of light in the dark. I ate something cold, listened to the wind, told myself again, I'm alone, safe. Then the quiet changed. It wasn't silence anymore, not exactly. A faint noise, like a bird calling, but wrong rhythm, too abrupt, too sharp. I strained my ears. The sound repeated. A hollow, lonely call. I can't explain it. Like a coyote crying, but broken, cut short mid-cry, as if someone had pressed pause in the middle of the forest. I stepped outside. The air was colder than before. Leaves rustled, but no wind. Nothing moved. Nothing alive. I called out. My voice sounded tiny in the vast forest. Hello? Nothing. I stepped back inside, locked the door, shivered. Maybe it was a trick of the sound. Maybe it was just me, nerves fraying after months of city life. I told myself I was imagining it. Then it came again. A crackle from the trees. A sound that almost imitated a human laugh, but wrong. Too sharp, too high, too empty. I froze. The air shifted. That feeling. Eyes, watching me. Something just beyond the tree line, staring, silent, unmoving. I wanted to run. I wanted to tell myself it wasn't real, but it was there. And for the first time, I noticed the quiet. It wasn't quiet. It was listening. Something in the forest was listening. I didn't know it yet, but that was the night it began. The forest exhaled, and I felt it. Not in my eyes, not in my ears, but in my chest. That pressing, terrible wrongness. I locked all the doors. I closed all the windows. But the forest didn't leave. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay on the couch, notebook in my lap, staring at the darkened windows. The forest pressed against the glass like a living wall. At first, it was just the usual night sounds. The wind rattling branches, a distant owl, leaves crunching under invisible feet. Then, I heard it. A cry. Soft. Far away. Like a coyote. But wrong. Something about it didn't sit right. The pitch jumped and stuttered. The sound cut off abruptly, mid-note, like someone had hit stop on a recording. I froze. The cabin felt too quiet. My own breathing seemed loud. I listened. It came again. Same cry, same broken rhythm. I tried to tell myself it was a coyote, or maybe a fox, or a raccoon, maybe even a deer. Anything. But my gut said no. This wasn't a natural sound. I crept to the window, heart hammering. The forest was black. Trees stood like statues. Nothing moved. The moon had disappeared behind clouds, leaving everything in ink. I leaned closer. The sound repeated, closer this time, sharper, distorted, almost deliberate. I stepped back. My mind raced. Could I be imagining this? After a long day of driving, of isolation, maybe my nerves were fraying. Maybe I'd gone mad before the month had even started. I went to the kitchen, poured a cup of coffee, tried to calm myself. Steam curled from the mug. The smell was comforting, normal. I sipped slowly. My hand shook. Then I heard it again. This time, not from the distance, not from the tree line. It was from the edge of the clearing. The sound bounced off the walls of the cabin. A coyote? A fox? I wanted to tell myself it was an animal, anything natural, but the timing, the cadence, it was wrong. And then something new. A second sound layered over it. A whisper, almost human. A single word. My name. I spun around. Nothing. Just shadows, trees, the walls of the cabin holding back the forest. My name. My voice? I swallowed. My own voice? No, I hadn't said anything. I checked the locks, double-checked. Windows secure, doors shut tight. I backed away from the window, hands trembling. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. The cries came again, echoing through the trees, interspersed with faint snapping noises, branches breaking, leaves rustling. But the sounds weren't random. They seemed to follow me, pausing when I stopped, jumping when I moved. I paced the cabin, tried to convince myself. It's an animal, I muttered. It's just the forest. But the sounds weren't normal, not natural, not organic. The cut-off notes, the timing, the imitation. I went to my bag, pulled out my recorder. I hit record on my phone and set it by the window. The sound came again. A high-pitched coyote scream, abrupt, broken, then a whisper, a hiss, my name again. I froze. The hairs on my arms stood up, my stomach clenched. I thought I was imagining it. I pressed play on the recording. Silence. I leaned closer. The forest seemed to pulse. The wind? No, something else. Something watching, listening, waiting. I checked the time. 2:14 a.m. I sat back in the chair, trembling. The cry came again, closer this time, right outside the cabin. I could hear leaves crunching under feet, slow, deliberate. My heart jumped. I stood, shaking, and pressed my ear against the door. Nothing. I turned. The window, shadows shifting between the trees. I could almost make out a shape, thin, too tall, too straight, too wrong. I told myself, it's a tree, a branch, your mind playing tricks. But then I heard it, a sound that made my stomach drop, a soft, wet click, like a tongue or a mouth, right at the edge of the clearing.
I held my breath. Silence. Then a whisper. "Come out." I jumped back, heart racing. The sound, not the wind, not the trees. That voice, it sounded human. It sounded alive, but wrong, empty, monotone. I stumbled to the door, locked it again, shivering. I wanted to call someone. Phone in my pocket? Signal? Nothing. The forest swallowed the bars. I backed into the corner. The shadows moved. Not the trees. Something else. Watching. Waiting. Mimicking. Learning. I didn't know it yet, but the woods weren't just full of animals, not just silence. Something was out there, and it knew my voice, and my name, and it was practicing. The click came again, wet, sharp, right by the porch, and I realized it wasn't calling for me. It was luring me.
Didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every shadow moved. Every whisper carried intent. Morning came pale, weak. Sunlight barely broke through the thick canopy. I kept the windows closed, door locked. The forest didn't look the same in daylight. Less threatening? Maybe. But still, wrong. I unpacked more. Books, cables, a small AM/FM radio I'd brought to stave off the isolation. I thought white noise might calm me. Something constant. Something human. I plugged it in, turned it to static, hissed and crackled. Comforting, familiar, background noise. My pulse slowed a little. Then a voice cut through. Not music, not a DJ, not a familiar broadcast. A voice. "I don't know if this will work." I froze, coffee halfway to my mouth. My own words. I remember saying that phrase yesterday, out loud, in my apartment, alone, to no one. I dropped the mug. It shattered. Static crackled, then silence. I rewound, unplugged, replugged, tried different stations. Nothing. White noise. Nothing human. Then it came again. "I don't know if this will work." Exactly my voice. Tone. Pace, accent, every tiny stammer I'd made when I muttered it. I scrambled, checked my bag, my phone. No one called, no recording, nothing. I pressed the radio closer. "I don't know if this will work." The words were repeated, a loop, monotone now, but unmistakably mine. I backed away, heart pounding, hands shaking. I tried to rationalize. Maybe a neighbor picked up a signal from a radio somewhere miles away? No, impossible. I live in the middle of nowhere, no one for 10 miles. I unplugged it, sat on the floor, knees to chest. Silence. Then a faint, distant scratching from outside. Leaves, branches, footsteps? I wasn't sure. I pressed my ear to the window. Nothing. Too quiet. But the wrongness was still there. I picked up the radio again, plugged it back in. Static. Hiss. Comfort. Then my voice again, slower this time. "I don't know if this will work." It sounded like a memory, not quite alive, not quite human, but perfectly me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw it out the window, but my hands wouldn't move. My body stiffened. My chest ached. Then another sound came through, faint. From outside? Behind me? I couldn't tell. A high-pitched squeal, like a fox in pain. Then silence. Then my voice again. "I don't know if this will work." And then laughter. Mine, almost, but wrong, hollow. Sharp, stuttering, laughing at me, not with me. I dropped the radio. It hit the floor, dial spinning, static roaring. I pressed my hands over my ears, heart hammering. My mind screamed, "This is not real. It's not real." But I knew it was. I could hear it, mimicking, learning, repeating, practicing,
Waiting. I went outside, sunlight weak, the forest looming. Gravel crunched under boots, leaves shivered under invisible steps. The porch was empty, no footprints, nothing. I spun around, shadows stretched unnaturally between the trees. One branch flicked against another. A bird took off, startled. I exhaled shakily. Back inside, I picked up the radio again. Static. My voice gone, for now. Relief. But relief didn't last. At that moment, from the tree line, I heard a voice whisper, soft, distant. My wife's voice. "Honey, I need you. Please." I froze. Impossible. She was hundreds of miles away, at home, safe. I backed against the wall, chest heaving. The radio hissed in my hands. I didn't touch it. The whisper came again, slightly closer. "Honey, help me." I pressed my hands over my ears, tried to shout. Nothing came out. My throat was tight. The forest waited, silent now. Empty? Maybe. But the air pressed down, eyes watching from every shadow. I realized the truth, and it hit like ice in my veins. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a coyote. It was listening. It was learning. And it knew how to call to me. It knew my voice. It knew the voices I love. And it wasn't outside anymore. It was everywhere I could hear.
Daylight felt fragile. The sun was pale, filtered through the dense canopy. I didn't dare open the windows anymore. My nerves were raw. Every sound made me flinch. I spent the morning unpacking more supplies, trying to convince myself the mimicry, whatever it was just some weird coincidence. That rational voice in my head kept whispering, "It's nothing, it's just the forest." But rationality was fading. Around mid-afternoon, I stepped outside to stretch. Gravel crunched under boots. Sun warmed my shoulders. I tried to listen. Just normal forest noises. Birds, wind, leaves. I froze. On the porch, footprints. Bare, muddy, long toes, too long. I knelt, tracing them with a trembling hand. Human? Maybe, but the proportions were wrong. The toes were elongated, spread unnaturally, gripping the wood like claws. I stood abruptly, heart hammering. The door was locked, windows secure. Nothing should have been able to leave prints here, nothing human. I glanced toward the forest. Branches swayed without wind. Shadows stretched and twisted between the trees. A rabbit darted across the clearing, but something larger, something was there, just beyond the tree line. I could feel it, watching, waiting. I went inside and slammed the door. I double-checked locks, every window, every latch, even the vents. I felt safer. For a moment. Then I heard it. A knock. Soft, polite, human, but wrong. I froze, staring at the door. It came again. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, methodical, deliberate. I couldn't move. My pulse was thundering in my ears. I wanted to call out, "Who's there?" But my voice caught in my throat. The knock changed rhythm. Faster, irregular, almost playful. I realized then it knew I was inside. It knew I was listening, testing me, prodding. I pressed my back against the far wall, tried to reason. It's an animal. Something fell. Branch, tree, nothing human. But the rhythm, the intelligence behind it said otherwise. I grabbed a baseball bat from the corner, heart hammering, eyes wide, hands shaking. I approached the door. Tap, tap, tap. It stopped. Silence. I leaned my ear toward the wood. Nothing, not a whisper, not a scratch, just silence. I stepped back. Then it came again. A whisper, soft, like someone breathing on the other side. "Let me in. Let me in. It hurts." It sounded human, terribly human, but there was no warmth, no life behind the voice. It was hollow, monotone, empty. I jumped back, slammed the door with the bat, locked it, tried to calm my shaking hands, tried to breathe. The porch was silent again. I told myself to stop thinking like this. It was just my imagination, long days, lonely nights, the forest playing tricks, right? I sat on the floor, bat across my lap, staring at the door. Every shadow seemed to stretch closer, like the trees themselves were leaning in. Then, movement. A long, thin shadow slipped along the porch rail, too straight, too fast, too deliberate. I screamed, scrambling to the other side of the room. My back hit the wall, bat raised, breath ragged. Then I heard it. Scratching. Nails. Slow, wet, deliberate, against the wood. Not random. Testing. Feeling. Learning. The footsteps followed it, sliding across the porch planks, and the whispers, they grew closer. "Let me in. Let me in. It hurts." I recognized that voice, my mother's voice, years ago, just before she died. I froze. My mind screamed, "It can't be her. She's dead. It's not real." But the voice didn't stop. It didn't falter. It repeated, every syllable clear. Pain, need, desperation. I gripped the bat tighter, my knees shaking. The sound of the forest outside, the leaves, the branches faded. All I could hear was her voice calling, pleading, wanting me to open the door. The forest waited, patient, silent, malicious. I knew then, with a creeping cold in my chest. It was learning which sounds worked, learning which voices could lure me. And it wouldn't stop until I fell for it. A shadow flicked at the edge of my vision, long, too tall, limbs stretching, not human. The knocking resumed. Tap, 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 faster now, like a heartbeat. I realized I wasn't imagining any of this. The forest wasn't empty, the cabin wasn't safe, and it was already inside my mind. Night came quickly, black and thick, pressing against the cabin like a living thing. I didn't eat. I didn't move much. I sat in the corner, bat across my lap, every muscle coiled, my ears strained against the silence, or what I thought was silence. And then I heard it. A woman crying. Soft at first, heartbreaking, raw, wrenching, human, but wrong. The pitch was slightly off, the rhythm too precise, too controlled. I froze. The tears I hadn't shed in days came to my eyes. I knew that voice, almost. Familiar, comforting, loving, and yet empty. "Please, help me." The sound came from just beyond the window. I inched closer, shaking. My hands gripped the bat so tight my knuckles whitened. I wanted to open the door. I wanted to rush outside. I wanted to see who it was. My mind told me it was someone trapped, someone needing help, but instinct screamed, no. I backed away. The crying continued, short, ragged gasps, every note tugging at me, twisting my chest, poisoning my thoughts. I pressed my back against the wall, tried to remember rationality. It's a trick. The forest, your imagination. The crying grew louder, closer. I pressed my ear to the glass. The tears burned. My heart thumped. My chest ached. Then I heard something else. A subtle movement in the shadows behind the woman's voice. A shift in the trees. A long, thin shape, too tall, moving unnaturally, limbs stretching like a spider. No face I could see, but its intent was clear, watching me, waiting for me to open the window. I swallowed hard. Nausea rose in my throat. The woman's cries became more desperate, more agonized. Every syllable was a hook, dragging me toward the dark outside. I closed my eyes, tried to think, tried to reason. It's just a fox. It's just an animal. It's not human. But then I realized it wasn't a fox. It wasn't any animal. It wasn't human either. It was learning,
mimicking, waiting for me to make a mistake, to open the door, to step into the forest, to fall into its trap. My hands shook, my knees buckled. I wanted to run, but I was trapped in the room, surrounded by walls that could not protect me from the sound, from the forest, from the thing outside. The crying grew louder, more frantic. My name slipped into it, whispered, half my voice, half hers, twisted, broken. "Please, come, help me, please." I couldn't take it. I lunged toward the radio, plugged it in. Static, white noise, comfort. For a moment, a fleeting moment. The crying stopped. Relief? No. Then it began again, right behind me this time. From the vent? The crack under the door? I didn't know, but it sounded inches away. "Help me! It hurts! Please!" I whirled. Nothing. Shadows in the corners of the room, the walls closing in, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then a tap. A single, soft tap on the window. I froze. My breath caught in my chest. I could see the faint outline of a figure pressed against the glass, tall, pale, limbs stretched, too long, fingers gripping the frame like roots, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and even in the darkness I felt its eyes, cold, calculating, patient. I wanted to scream, to run, to throw myself outside and escape, but I couldn't. Something in me knew if I moved, it would strike. The crying grew louder, my mother's voice, my wife's voice, my own, all woven together, pleading, hurting, reaching for me. The figure pressed its face against the glass, pale, stretched, wrong. Trying to smile but failing, lips too thin, skin pulled too tight, eyes empty, vast, merciless. And then it whispered, almost inaudibly, "Come, come closer." I stumbled back, heart hammering, breath ragged. The radio hissed, static filled the room, but the voice overpowered it. The mimic's voice, its cries, its lure. And I realized it knew exactly how to get me, exactly which voices to use, exactly which sounds, exactly how to make me step outside. And I was so close to doing it. The tapping grew faster, the whispers louder, the cries more desperate. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. And then a hand pressed against the other side of the glass, long, thin, pale, fingernails curling like hooks, pressing, pressing. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even blink fast enough to block the image pressed against the glass. Then the moon broke through the clouds, thin, pale light spilled across the clearing, and I saw it. Not a shadow, not a trick of the trees. It was standing, just beyond the tree line, tall, pale, ridiculously thin, limbs too long, arms swinging like they didn't belong to a human, bending at angles that made my stomach knot. Its legs were spindly, twisted, feet gripping the ground with toes longer than any human's. It didn't run, it didn't walk, it moved like a spider, limbs stretching, curling, slithering over each other, smooth and deliberate. Every movement exaggerated, unnatural, precise. I pressed my back against the wall, heart hammering, bat trembling in my hands. And then I heard it. Not the crying, not the mimicry, but a clicking sound, like 100 tiny nails tapping on glass, on wood, on stone, echoing, deliberate, counting me, testing me. Its head tilted, too far, almost breaking its neck, eyes too wide, too black, watching, waiting. I realized then, this wasn't a person, not human, not spirit, not even animal. It was something else, something intelligent, patient, and deadly. It began to step closer, limbs bending impossibly, folding, stretching over the fallen branches, each step silent except for the faint click of its claws on the rocks beneath it. I could see the hands now, pale, elongated, skin stretched too tight over bone, fingers curling like hooks, its head twisted unnaturally to keep eyes on me, eyes that didn't blink, eyes that calculated. I swung the bat, more to remind myself I could fight than to actually strike. It didn't flinch, didn't react, just stopped, paused, tilted its head as though studying my panic. I swallowed hard. Nausea rose, breath ragged. My hands shook so violently I dropped the bat. It clattered against the floorboards. The creature didn't move toward me. Not yet. It watched. And then it did something that made my stomach drop. It smiled. But it wasn't a smile. Not really. Its lips stretched too wide, skin pulling tight over sharp teeth, thin and white. No warmth, no humor, just wrong. I stumbled backward, tripping over a chair, heart hammering, mind racing. Then I heard a sound from the porch, soft, wet, shuffling. It wasn't outside anymore. It was testing the door again, scratching, pressing, something alive, patient, pressing to get inside. I realized with horror that it didn't need to come in. It didn't need the door. It could lure me out, or wait, learn, practice. And worse, I understood its method. All the crying, the mimicking, the whispering, it wasn't random. It was a predator, biological, intelligent, learning the sounds that would get me to move, to step outside, to come close enough to be caught. I tried to call my wife. Phone? Signal? Nothing. Dead. I tried to call 911. Dead. I tried to scream, my voice caught in my throat. The walls seemed to close in. My ears rang. The creature stepped closer. Not fast, but deliberate, limbs folding and stretching like a nightmare made flesh. It clicked its fingers, or toes, I wasn't sure. Every tap a message, a countdown, a warning. I pressed myself against the far wall, eyes wide, shaking. It stopped, and then it whispered. My voice, from somewhere I couldn't pinpoint, right behind me, but also in front. Come out. It's okay. Come. I spun around. Nothing. Then I heard it laugh. My laugh. Hollow, twisted, sharp. And I realized I wasn't just in danger. It wanted me to see it, to know it, to be afraid. Because the second I acknowledged it, it would begin hunting me in earnest. And then it pressed a hand, or something like a hand, against the window, long, thin fingers curling as if reaching for me. And that's when I noticed it. The way its limbs moved, not like joints, but like sinews stretching beyond reason, the way it leaned into the night, tilting its head and following me wherever I moved. It was patient, calculating, and I realized with terror, it wasn't just waiting, it was studying me. I couldn't stay in the living room, not after seeing it, not after feeling its fingers press against the glass, not after knowing it was watching me. I grabbed my phone, trembling. My hands shook so violently I could barely dial. I had to hear a human voice, my wife's voice, anything, someone. Signal flickered. 1 bar, 2, then gone. I tried again, redialed, heart hammering. A click, static, and then her voice. Hello? Relief. Sweet relief. My hands stopped shaking. My voice returned. Honey, thank God, Nothing. Her voice repeated the first words I'd said, over and over. Honey, thank God, Honey, thank God, Honey, thank God. It wasn't her, not really. The tone flat, monotone, mechanical. I froze, staring at the phone. My chest tightened, my stomach churned. Then she, or the thing, spoke again. I can't. I can't. I can't. It mimicked my panic perfectly. The way I'd gasped when I panicked, the way I stuttered, every nuance, every hesitation. I slammed the phone down. My ears rang, heart racing. I stared out the window. Shadows twisted among the trees, limbs bending impossibly. A figure crouched, then stretched, limbs folding like a nightmare spider. Pale, too tall, watching. I picked up the phone again, redialed. Prayers whispered between shallow breaths. Click, static. Her voice. Mine. Both. Twisted, broken, layered. Help me. I can't. Please, help me. I can't. I dropped the phone. My knees buckled. I pressed myself against the wall, bat in hand, breath coming fast. It was everywhere. Every sound, every movement, every corner of my mind. The mimic had learned my voice, my panic, my loved ones. The radio flickered on by itself, static, then a phrase I hadn't said aloud for months. But it was my own voice again, repeating, mocking, hollow. I realized then it didn't need to come inside. It didn't need doors or windows. It didn't need to hunt me physically. Not yet. It was inside my mind, inside my senses, inside my memory. Every sound it made, every voice it mimicked was a test, a lure, a way to manipulate me. I tried to leave the living room, step into the kitchen, grab anything to defend myself. A voice called out, not mine, not my wife's, but the same inflection, the same rhythm. Don't leave me. It hurts. I spun around. Nothing. Just the shadows stretching between the trees outside. Branches twisting, bending at angles that made no sense. Limbs long, fingers curling, following my every movement. I backed into the corner, eyes wide, bat in hand, breath shallow. The phone rang again. My own ringtone. The screen flashed. I picked it up. Click. Static. Then, laughter. Not my laugh. Not hers. Something broken, hollow, mechanical, mimicking, learning. I dropped it, ran to the window. The forest was silent. For a moment. Then the sound returned. A scraping, low, wet, clicking, across the porch, across the roof. I couldn't tell. My ears struggled to place it. And through the scratching, the whispering, my wife's voice, my mother's voice, my voice, intertwined, layered, all calling, pleading, mocking, guiding. I pressed myself against the wall, tried to shut it out, tried to convince myself, it's not real, you're imagining it. Then a voice cut through the chaos, clear, sharp, from somewhere behind the walls. Outside. I swallowed hard, heart hammering, pulse screaming, my legs locked. It was giving me instructions now, commands, testing me, seeing if I would obey. And I realized I couldn't hide from it. Not here, not in this cabin, not anywhere it could hear. It didn't need to break in. It only needed me to make the wrong move. And if I did, I wouldn't survive.
It stopped hiding. I realized that first when the scratching on the walls changed. No longer tentative, no longer testing. Now it was deliberate, aggressive, insistent. The cabin shook. Not much, just small vibrations through the floorboards, but enough. Enough to tell me it had decided to start the hunt. I gripped the bat, sweaty hands shaking, breath ragged. I backed into the corner. Tap, tap, tap. Not from outside, from the walls. Wood panels flexing, the floorboards moaning, something scraping along the ceiling. The windows rattled, the door groaned against the locks. It was everywhere, not just outside, not just in the forest. It had found a way to touch the cabin itself, test its defenses, learn its weaknesses. I pressed my back against the wall, tried to make myself small, tried to convince myself it was just an animal, a storm, anything but what I knew it really was. The tapping grew louder, faster, like a heartbeat, counting, testing, mocking. And then I heard a low growl, not animal, not human, something in between, crawling through the walls, sliding along the ceiling, the sound of something wet and heavy moving just above me. I raised the bat, swung at the ceiling. Nothing, but the sound shifted, behind me, along the floorboards. It knew I could hear it. It knew I could hear it. I ran to the window, pulled the curtains, peeked outside. Trees black against the night, shadows stretched unnaturally, limbs folding and bending, crawling toward the porch, but no figure, not yet. A whisper came from the vent. My voice, my wife's, my mother's, layered together, broken, pleading. Open it. It's okay. It's okay. I shook my head, covered my ears, stumbled backward. Tap, tap, tap. The door rattled. Something hit it, hard, again and again, something trying the handle, testing the lock, pressing, searching, patient, intelligent. I realized with horror it wasn't breaking in yet. It didn't need to. It wanted me to panic first, to make a mistake, to run, to leave a weakness. The scratching moved along the walls, higher, across the ceiling. I could hear it moving from room to room, listening, learning, studying my reactions. I grabbed the radio, turned it on. Static filled the room. My hands shook, tried to drown out the sounds, tried to calm myself. Then it spoke. My voice, clear, from the other side of the wall, repeating a phrase I'd muttered hours ago. I'm scared. I can't. I dropped the radio, heart hammering, breath ragged. The windows rattled violently now, something pressed against them, long, thin fingers gripping the glass, limbs folding unnaturally, crawling along the roofline. My stomach churned. Then came the scratching on the door again, nails dragging, dry, sharp, slow, purposeful. I realized it was counting, testing my reaction, studying me. I could hear it breathing through the vents, deep, wet, deliberate, waiting, watching, learning. And then from the darkness behind me, I heard it move, faster now, limbs clicking against the floor, something wrong, something impossible, skittering across the boards. I backed into the corner, bat across my chest, breath shaking, eyes wide. The door shook violently, tap, 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 followed by a low, wet rattle. Then a whisper, directly in my ear, though no one was there. You can't hide. I know you. I screamed. It knew me, everything about me, my panic, my voice, my loved ones, my patterns. And now it had started the siege. I realized with a cold, creeping certainty the cabin was no longer safe. The hunt had begun, and I had no idea how to survive it.
It was worse than the scratching, worse than the tapping, worse than the claws on the roof. It spoke. Not my voice this time, not my voice, my wife's or my mother's, but one of them, someone I loved, someone I couldn't protect. Let me in! It hurts! The words came sharp, desperate, echoing through the cabin. The voice trembled, sobbed, screamed in agony. My chest constricted, my stomach twisted. I felt bile rise. I froze. The sound came from everywhere, the vents, the walls, the floorboards, the radio that had gone silent. Even outside, through the thin glass, I could hear it. Every syllable pierced me, tugged at my gut, made me want to rush to the window. I shook my head violently. My hands clutched the bat, knuckles white. No, not outside, not ever. But the voice continued. Please, help me, it hurts so much. My mind screamed, my heart screamed, my own panic echoed in the cabin. Then I realized the worst part. It wasn't her, not alive, not real. It was him. No, it wasn't a him, not even a human. The mimic. It had learned. It had learned the voices I cared about most, the voices that would lure me, twist me, break me. It wasn't trying to scare me anymore. It was trying to control me. I pressed my hands over my ears, tried to shut it out, tried to convince myself. It's a trick. You're imagining it. It can't be real. But the words cut through. Let me in! Please! I can't! And then another sound. The faint click of claws on the roof. Limbs bending, sliding, testing, measuring, watching. I wanted to run, but the voice, the pleading, made me hesitate. My mind spun, rationality slipped, every fiber of me wanted to rush to save the person I loved. And that's when it pressed a hand, long, pale, spider-like, against the glass again, just above the window frame, fingers splayed, curling slightly, watching me, calculating, waiting. The voice screamed again, my mother's tone perfect, pleading, my wife's tone exact. The mimic layered them, intertwined, every note twisted, every syllable designed to make me open the door. I staggered back. Please, help me! Don't leave me! I slammed myself against the wall, heart hammering, breath ragged. My hands shook. And then I realized something even worse. It wasn't just outside. It didn't need to be. The mimic had learned my instincts, my weaknesses, my love, my panic. It was inside my mind, inside my senses, and it would never stop. Another knock. Tap, 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 on the walls, on the floor, on the ceiling, a rhythm, counting, testing, mocking. The crying, the pleading, the mimicry, all converged into a symphony of torture, designed to manipulate, designed to make me make a mistake. I knew what it wanted, for me to open the door, to step outside, to come closer, to die. I gripped the bat tighter, tried to steady my shaking hands, tried to focus, tried to convince myself I could survive this. But the voice screamed again. It hurts! Please, don't let it hurt me! And this time, I swear I saw it move inside the cabin, not outside, inside. Limbs stretching along the walls, fingers scraping along the wood, twisting, folding, bending impossibly. The radio clicked back on, static. Then my voice, distorted, pleading. I screamed, dropped the bat, covered my face, trembling. And then, silence. The kind of silence that presses into your skull, that makes your ears ring, that leaves your chest tight. I opened one eye. The shadow at the window was gone. I swallowed hard. I should have felt relief, but I didn't, because I knew it wasn't gone. It never went anywhere. It was waiting, learning, planning. And the next time I heard the voice, I realized I might not survive it.
Darkness isn't just the absence of light. It's a weight, a presence, a living thing pressing against you from every direction. The generator died just after midnight. I had heard it sputter once, cough, and then silence. The cabin went black. I was in the corner, trembling, heart hammering. The bat felt like a lead weight in my hands. My ears strained for any sound, anything. At first, nothing, just the stillness. Then it came, a low, wet rasping, breathing, slow, close. Inside the vents, behind the walls, I couldn't tell. I tried to reach the flashlight, hands shaking, fumbling, batteries scattered. The beam finally cut a thin circle of yellow light across the room, but it didn't illuminate the entire cabin. It couldn't. Shadows swirled, danced, stretched into impossible shapes. Then I heard it move. Soft footfalls, limbs folding, stretching, crawling. Across the floorboards, along the ceiling, pressing against the walls. It was everywhere.
inside my sanctuary, inside my mind. I backed into the wall, heart racing, tried to keep breathing shallow, tried to convince myself it was just a dream. And then the breathing changed. Closer, wet, ragged, slow, deliberate, calculating, almost amused. I realized it had learned to mimic sounds without speaking, just raw biological motion. Its body could imitate the noises of the cabin itself, creaking wood, floorboards shifting, metal scraping. My senses were deceived. A whisper came, my voice, my wife's, my mother's, intertwined, layered, pleading, desperate, hollow. Please, help me. Don't leave. I fell to my knees. My hands clutched my ears. My mind screamed. I couldn't stop listening, couldn't stop responding. Every instinct in me wanted to run, to open a door, to do something, anything. Then the scraping started again, something sliding along the roof, fingers driving across shingles, claws tapping. It was trying the attic, trying the chimney, searching, patient, intelligent. I realized, with a chill crawling down my spine, that it didn't need the doors to catch me. It was learning how to enter, how to reach me. I fumbled for the radio, static, tried to drown out the sounds, tried to create a buffer between my mind and the mimic, but it wasn't enough. It layered my own voice over the static, screaming, pleading, mocking. Then it whispered directly into my ear, though no one was there. You can't hide. I know you. I screamed, stumbled backward, hit the wall, heart hammering, breath coming fast, sweat running down my spine. And then it laughed. Not human, not natural, hollow, wet, sharp, like air escaping a cracked lung, like metal grinding, like every sound in the forest twisted into one. The darkness pressed harder, shadows shifted, limbs bent, faces, pale, twisted, impossible, appeared at the edges of the flashlight's beam for a split second, gone before I could process them. I realized I couldn't rely on light or sound or the walls themselves. None of it mattered. It was patient, intelligent, watching, learning, waiting for the moment I'd panic, the moment I'd run, the moment I'd slip. And then the scratching changed, faster, louder, along the walls, the ceiling, the floor, testing the doors, testing the windows, testing me. It knew I was alone, that I was unarmed, that I was terrified. I dropped to the floor shaking. The flashlight slipped from my hands. Darkness swallowed it, the last thin circle of light gone. The breathing grew louder just above my head, limbs scraping across the ceiling, fingers raking the walls, each sound a threat, a promise. I pressed my back to the corner, tried to make myself small, tried to ignore the whispering voices layered together, begging, pleading, mocking, guiding. And then a single phrase rang out, crystal clear, from somewhere too close, too impossible. Come to me. I realized then with cold certainty, the cabin was no longer a refuge, and the mimic wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside.
I couldn't move. The darkness had weight now, thick, solid, pressing against my chest. Every breath was a struggle, every sound made my ears ring. Then I heard it. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, across the roof shingles. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the pattern was too precise, too careful, not random, not natural. It was pacing, walking, searching, measuring. I pressed myself into the corner, bat trembling in my hands, eyes wide in the black. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The cabin was a box, a trap. And above me, something moved. Clicking, scraping, thumping, limbs bending impossibly, fingers dragging, nails raking the shingles. The roof groaned, every step deliberate, testing for weaknesses. I realized with horror it wasn't just outside, not just in the yard, not just pressing at the windows. It was on top of me, above me, watching, calculating, learning. I could hear it move from one end of the roof to the other, long, wet, scraping noises, soft, almost silent, and yet somehow my entire body felt the vibration through the floorboards. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, my heart hammering. Then came the sound I dreaded most, something sliding closer to the chimney. I froze, my mind racing. It didn't need a door. It didn't need a window. It could find its way in through the attic, through the vents, through anything. I crouched low, trying to stay beneath the eaves, trying to convince myself it couldn't find me in the dark. Then I heard it. A long, wet scrape along the ridge of the roof. Fingers, limbs pressing, testing, reaching, twisting, bending at angles that made my stomach knot. The air shifted. The silence around me ripped away. Every shadow stretched toward me, carried by the vibrations above. I pressed my back harder against the wall, bat trembling in my hands, eyes straining, trying to pick out shapes in the black. Then the whisper came. My wife's voice, my mother's, my own, layered, pleading, mocking. "It hurts. Come. Don't leave me." I shook my head violently, tried to shut it out, tried to ground myself in reality. But then the roof groaned again. The creature had found something, maybe a loose shingle, a crack, a weak spot, something it could exploit. I pressed my hands to my ears, tried to ignore it, tried to stay calm, tried to stay alive. Then I heard a tap from the ceiling, inside the attic. A soft, deliberate, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. It was testing the hatch, testing the door I hadn't even realized led up there. I backed away, heart hammering, every instinct in me screaming. And then came the scraping again, faster now, louder, limbs folding, stretching, crawling along the shingles, pressing, measuring, calculating. I realized with a sickening certainty, it wasn't just trying to scare me anymore. It was preparing to enter, preparing to hunt me. It had been patient, it had learned, it had waited, and now it was ready. A shadow flicked across the ceiling below me, too fast, too long, limbs bending impossibly, sliding across the roofline, watching me, waiting. I gripped the bat tighter, tried to steady my shaking hands. The attic hatch rattled. Tap, tap, tap. A whisper directly into my ear, though no one was there. "I'm right above you." I screamed.
I didn't move, couldn't move. The roof was quiet now. Too quiet. I dared to glance toward the window and saw it. Face pressed against the glass. Not human, not anything human should look like. Pale, stretched, skin pulled taut over bone, lips curling into a smile that wasn't a smile, just an imitation, grotesque, wrong. Eyes wide, black, unblinking, watching, studying, waiting. I froze, bat trembling in my hands, heart hammering. Then it moved. Just a fraction, just enough to let me see it wasn't alone in its mimicry. its head tilted in impossible angles, limbs true long pressed against the frame, fingers hooked, curling, claws dragging across the wood. And then it whispered, my name, low, soft, dry, deliberate. Dmitri. I stumbled backward, hit the wall, breath coming fast, my stomach twisted. Every hair on my arms stood up. It pressed closer, face flattening against the glass, trying to force the smile wider, lips cracking, skin stretching, eyes fixed on me. I wanted to scream, to run, to throw myself outside and escape. But I knew the moment I moved, it would be ready. I backed toward the corner, shaking, tried to focus, tried to remember rational thoughts. Then I heard another sound. Clicking, sliding, limbs folding along the porch, testing, measuring, calculating. It wasn't just the face now. It was the body, every limb grotesque, every movement precise, like a spider stalking prey. And then the whisper came again. My wife's voice, my mother's, layered over my own, twisting, broken, pleading, mocking. Come, it's okay. Come outside. I pressed my hands over my ears, tried to shut it out, tried to convince myself I was imagining it. The figure didn't leave. Its face stayed pressed against the glass, eyes unblinking, smile widening. I realized then it knew me, knew my fear, knew the exact notes, tones, and rhythms that would make me panic. And now it was using them. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were glued to it, mesmerized, terrified. A tap on the glass, soft, deliberate, testing, waiting. And then another. I know you're there. I screamed, bat flailing, knuckles hitting the wood. The glass shivered but didn't break. It pressed closer, its skin stretched impossibly, fingers splayed, limbs folding against the frame, its face twisted in that awful smile. And then silence. The whispering stopped, the tapping stopped, the forest outside quieted. Too quiet. I realized then the most terrifying thing of all. It wasn't gone. It was just waiting. Waiting for me to make a mistake. Waiting for me to leave the corner. Waiting for me to breathe wrong. And I knew deep in my chest that the next time it moved, it wouldn't just be at the window. I knew it was coming. The silence after the window whispers pressed against my mind like a vice. Every nerve screamed at me, warning me that the moment I had feared had arrived. A crack. Not loud, not dramatic, just the soft snap of a wooden frame giving way. I spun toward the window, my heart slammed in my chest, bat in trembling hands, eyes wide. The glass wasn't fully broken, just enough. A thin, jagged line along the frame. Its long, pale fingers had forced a weak spot. The mimic wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of claws dragging along the broken glass, pressing, testing, waiting. I backed into the kitchen, stomach twisting, breath coming fast, bat raised, shaking. It wasn't human, not even remotely. Limbs bending at impossible angles, fingers curling like hooks, the head tilted in ways that made me nauseous, pale, emaciated skin stretched over bone, teeth flashing in that awful imitation of a smile. The creature pressed its face through the jagged window, whispered my name. Layered voices, mine, my wife's, my mother's, pleading, mocking, calling. Come closer. It's okay. I stumbled backward, tripping over a chair, heart hammering, breath ragged. My hands clutched the bat tighter, tried to convince myself it was still just outside, but the sound told me otherwise. Scraping across the floorboards, limbs folding and unfolding, pressing against the walls, testing my barricades, calculating, patient, intelligent. I grabbed a chair, threw it at the window. It passed through the frame as if it were nothing, like I'd thrown it at mist. The mimic hissed, wet, sharp, a sound no living thing could make. Its laugh echoed in the cabin, bouncing off walls, pressing into my skull. I ran toward the bathroom, locked the door, barricaded it with anything I could push in front of it. Cabinets, a trash can, my fallen chair. Tap, tap, tap along the wood, scraping, clicking, limbs pressing against the door, testing, measuring, waiting. I could hear it breathing through the cracks, slow, wet, deliberate, patient. The whispering continued through the vents, voices layered, pleading, hurting, mocking. You can't hide. I know you. I pressed myself into the corner, bat raised, hands shaking. My chest ached, my mind raced. And then came the sound that made me freeze. A low, wet click, right behind the door, sliding, limbs stretching, pressing, twisting. I pressed my back harder against the wall, tried to calm my shaking hands, tried to ground myself in reality. And then it did something I didn't think it could. A long, spindly finger reached under the door, pale, too thin, hooked, sliding along the floor toward me. I screamed, swung the bat. The finger recoiled. The creature hissed again, wet, sharp. Then the scraping along the window stopped. The whispering outside vanished. Silence settled in the cabin for a split second. I dared to breathe. And that's when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of the other window sliding, a lock giving way. The mimic had found another entry. It wasn't just testing anymore. It was hunting. And the cabin was no longer mine.
The bathroom was my last stand. I barricaded the door as best I could, chest heaving, bat shaking in my hands. Every nerve screamed at me. Every shadow in the cabin felt alive. Every whisper pressed into my skull. Tap, tap, tap. The sound came again. Not the bathroom door, not the roof. Somewhere inside, sliding, pressing, measuring, waiting. I forced myself to breathe, tried to focus, tried to remember what was real and what wasn't. Then it moved. Not fast, not rushing, just deliberate, precise, limbs bending in impossible ways, pressing through the crack under the door, the faucet, the vent, anywhere it could reach. I swung the bat at the door, hit something, a hollow thunk. The wood shuddered. Not enough. It hissed, low, wet, sharp. The sound pressed into my chest. My teeth clenched. My ears rang. And then I heard it. The sound no living thing could make. A voice. Mine. Twisted, hollow, screaming, pleading, layered over my wife's voice, my mother's, my own. Every note perfect, every inflection exact. You can't hide. Come to me. It hurts. Please. I pressed myself into the corner, bat raised, trembling, shaking, breath shallow. And then it appeared. Not fully, not all at once, just a shadow, folding over itself, limbs stretching, curling, bending, fingers scraping along the walls. It smelled wet, metallic, wrong. I swung the bat. It twisted out of the way, limbs bending like liquid. The shadow snapped back at me, hissing, claws dragging along the tiles. I grabbed the fire extinguisher, sprayed. The cloud filled the small room. I swung blindly. Something hit the wall with a wet crunch. A sound, unholy,
No human, no animal, nothing I had ever heard. A high-pitched screech, layered with a guttural, wet grinding. It echoed off the walls. My ears rang. My skull felt like it was splitting. It recoiled. The shadow twisted, turning impossibly, tilting its head at an angle no human neck could bend. Then it hissed again, and it whispered, my name. Soft, wet, deliberate. I see you. I know you. I swung the bat again, hit something solid. It recoiled, screeched. Then silence. I pressed my back against the corner, chest heaving, eyes wide, my ears strained, my skull throbbed. And then, just when I thought I might have a moment to breathe, tap, tap, tap. From above, the ceiling, limbs pressing, sliding, testing, waiting. The shadow moved in the fire extinguisher cloud, limbs bending, stretching, twisting, fingers scraping, teeth flashing in that horrific imitation of a smile. And then it hissed again, closer, inside the cloud, smelling, feeling, learning. I realized with a sickening certainty, no matter what I did, I couldn't kill it. Not truly. Not without... A crash. The bathroom door splintered. Pieces of wood flew across the room. It had broken through, and now it was in the room with me.
The bathroom door splintered. I screamed, bat swinging, heart hammering, breath coming in ragged gasps, limbs bending, twisting, scraping through the shards of wood. The shadow pressed in, pale, impossible, stretching, teeth flashing in that awful imitation of a smile. I grabbed the only chance I had left, the back door. I ran, barefoot, bloodied from broken glass and splintered wood. The cold night air hit my face, wet with sweat. Branches lashed at my skin, roots tore at my feet. Every step a potential trap, every shadow a threat. And I could hear it. Footsteps behind me, clicking, scraping, limbs folding, stretching, breathing wet, deliberate, patient, whispering voices, mine, hers, my mother's, layered together, pleading, mocking, guiding. Come, don't leave, I know you. I ran blindly, branches snapping underfoot, leaves crunching, heart hammering, breath ripping through my chest. The radio in the cabin, somehow still on, sputtered, static, then a voice, mine, whispering, low, wet, deliberate. You can't escape. I didn't stop, couldn't stop. Every fiber of me screamed to keep moving. My car, my salvation was a few 100 feet away, just a few 100. Then I heard a sound I'll never forget. Something crawling over the cabin roof again, limbs pressing, dragging, measuring. It was following me, testing, learning, calculating. I stumbled, fell, dirt and leaves in my mouth, heart hammering. And then I saw the car. Headlights off, engine cold. My hands fumbled with the keys, my fingers slick with sweat and blood. I yanked the door open, shoved myself inside, slammed it. I turned the key, engine roared to life, tires spun on wet leaves. I slammed it into gear and floored it. Branches whipped past, trees blurred, my lungs burned, my hands shook on the wheel. And then, silence. No footsteps, no scraping, no whispering, just the engine, tires spinning through mud and leaves. I looked in the rearview mirror. The cabin disappeared into the darkness, shadows stretching from the tree line, limbs bending, fingers pressing against the night, watching, waiting, patient. Then the radio clicked on, static, whispering voices layered together, and one voice, clear, soft, deliberate, sent a chill down my spine. You can't leave. I know you. I slammed my hand on the dial, static, then silence. Miles down the road, darkness behind me, headlights cutting through the fog, heart still hammering, sweat drying on my face. I told myself it was over, that I had escaped, that it couldn't leave the cabin, that the morning would bring safety. But I knew better.
It had learned, it had memorized me, my fear, my patterns, my loved ones' voices, and somewhere in the darkness behind me, it was still watching, waiting, patient, intelligent. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just drove. And the radio clicked again, static, then a whisper, soft, wet, perfect, my own voice. I'm right behind you. I floored it and drove faster than I've ever driven in my life.